right, welcome to the 100% Wild podcast. I'm Mark Kenyon with Wired to Hunt. On the other side of the interweb is my good buddy Matt Drury. How are you?
I'm good, buddy. How are you?
I'm good. I'm taking a much needed little break from the woods today, so it's good to be here.
I hear you. I did an all-dayer yesterday, and I got my butt handed to me.
Uh, yeah, I know that. I know that feeling.
Yeah.
So we haven't chatted really since the beginning of this, peak type rut activity period.
Yeah.
We've got a good question of the day today, but before that, if you don't mind, I'm kind of curious to hear how things are going for you.
Yeah, so a lot has happened in that period. And so I went in, much like you, planning vacation schedule. And it's funny to say that when this is what you do for a living, but
Right.
planning your time in the woods. And when you have family and all that, you got to map it out ahead of time. So going into what I felt like was going to be the best part of the rut, looking at the moon, looking at just the conditions, I felt like that November 6th through the 10th was going to be really, really strong. And then there in Missouri, where I'm hunting, the gun season started on the 11th. So opening weekend of gun was 11th and 12th of November. So
Okay.
I felt like, all right, I'm going to really hit it hard November 6th through the 12th. And I had hunted a little bit here and there. I really was picking and choosing my battles because, of course, Halloween and, with the kids and all that stuff, like that's just not an option for me on Halloween night. So, it's fine. It's cool. So I was just picking and choosing my battles and knowing that I was going to be gone that whole, 7 days or whatever it is. So, that same week is the week my lease partner, Adam Wainwright, was coming in to hunt the lease. And in years past, I had always bowed out and decided he never asked me to, but I always decided, you know what, this is the only week he has to hunt. And at the time, we really didn't have a lot of stands on the lease. So I just would bow out for that good part of the rut and I'd go to Dad's or whatever the case may be. Well, this year, I had set up enough new sets, me and my camera guy, Trevor Walker, we had set up enough new sets and spots and food plots, and I really set it up so that we could both hunt that week and not be pressuring each other on this, when no matter what the wind is going to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, going into that week, all out of nowhere, all of a sudden, it's showing a easterly wind. And it totally kills us. Like like I don't have many spots for an easterly wind at all. And northerly, northwest, that's usually what we have there during that time, during the fall in general. And that's like 80% of my spots. So I had to scramble to get like a new game plan in place. And so I went into 3 sets that were already hung that had been there since, because Adam had the lease a couple years before I jumped on it with him, and a couple former Drury Outdoors camera guys had set it up with him. Aaron Bennett, who's a Whitetail Properties agent, and Tim Sigler, Andrew Bennett. So it's already been set up, and I had just been hunting their stands. And finally this year I made my adjustments. Well, those couple stands that I didn't check and haven't hunted in like 2 years, they're all for easterly winds. So like the day before, I think it was, I don't know, it was like Sunday. Or no, I know what it was. I went in on the 6th, Monday, hunted Monday morning. And then during the lunch break, I think is what it was, I went and trimmed 2 of the sets. And then I sat in one of them that evening because that was the first easterly. And then Tuesday, Adam got in Monday night, and Tuesday we started hunting. And Tuesday morning, I'm trying to think of how this went. It's all a blur now. I've hunted, I don't know how many, like you, I don't know how many days I've hunted this year. Yeah. One of the days we snuck in at like midday to the only set I hadn't trimmed yet, and it's in my South Timber, and it was like void of activity last year. Like there wasn't a deer in the South Timber because they were working on the local bridge, and the only way, like it was blown up right through the rut last year and through the hunting season. So they were coming through my farm, the community, to my lease to get around this bridge that was busted. And so the south end of my farm was just hell, frankly. And so I decided I hadn't put any focus on it this year, and that was my mistake not doing that. So leading into this, we're like scrape sites, like historic scrape trees, like I'm seeing no sign on my north timber, like it's horrible. And so that one afternoon, we took the truck and started kind of driving the perimeters, and there's sign all over my south timber. I'm like, what in the world? Totally missed this whole section of the farm. And so I went in, tipped in there. We went down to this south timber spot. It's money when you got the right wind for that. And so we went into it, and there's sign everywhere, and it's totally ripped up, and there's super highways going through the timber.
Jeez.
And me and my camera guy Trevor look at each other. We're like, oh my gosh, like what did we do? Like total nightmare. We totally missed this. So we trimmed it very quickly. Like the access to this spot is deluxe. It's like maybe 30 yards straight into the timber. Like you come in from up top and you go down, like almost straight down. Well, the path walking into this is what the deer have been using to get in and out of the timber, and it's a super highway going in. So I hated that we're walking it, but we tipped in there, trimmed a few little spots, and by and large it was good to go. And I think I added a new ratchet strap because we hadn't been in there in 2 years. So we get out, we hunt it the next morning. I put Adam, we're kind of hunting perimeter stuff because the easterly wind just isn't good for our money spot. And looking towards the middle part of the week, I knew the wind was gonna get good enough, like the pressure was gonna get good enough, most of all, like 30.3, 30.2, 30.4, that I felt like even though the wind wasn't ideal, that we'd be able to push it in our north timber where Adam killed blades and I missed uni and he should have shot a uni again last year. Like this is the spot, but we stayed out of there. I've only hunted it once the whole year. And I knew in the middle of the week the weather would be good enough to push it. So I was going to stick him in what we felt like was still the best spot where we've had the best encounters. We were just waiting to do it. So going back, I know I'm giving a lot of info here, but just kind of give the history of what
it's
the
good.
outlook is. So Tuesday morning, we're both hunting. I put him on a new gate gap stand that a northeast wouldn't really blow it out. It wasn't great, but it wasn't horrible. And we had just hung the spot for the rut. It was going to be a good spot. But ideally, you get a north or a northwest. Just the way it lays, a northeast isn't horrible. So we stuck Adam there. And then I actually went into that south timber spot. And so we get in there, and right out of the gate, it's like pandemonium. And it's so thick in there. Like it's, what do they call that? God, it's like a berry. It's a little small red berry on these little undergrowth trees. And I can't remember the name of it now. Automala or something like that. And the deer just love them. They're just in there eating them. Well, the problem with them is they're tall enough where it doesn't look like from the stand that it's very high or very thick. But when you get down in there and you look underneath it, it's like its own community underneath this cover. Well, from up high, you don't see anything unless they're in front of you. And we have a decent opening, but they got to be in that opening. So right out of the gate, there's deer chasing. There must be a hot doe in there, and there's young bucks chasing them. Well, this is where I made my mistake for the year, I feel like. We didn't plan. So Aaron Bennett, who's filmed me a long time, filmed Dad, filmed Mark, great dude, works for Whitetail Properties. He killed a nice buck on his lease that morning. And it's a great kill. It's a good buck. And like, we're all excited. And he's like, I'm coming over there and I'm going to show you guys. Let's get together for lunch. And in my gut, I knew we shouldn't get out. But I hadn't seen Adam yet. Like, Adam met us at the farm, and I talked to him for like 30 seconds, and we got into our spots. So I hadn't really talked to Adam yet. It was like a camp type of a feeling. It's like, all right, let's get together. Let's get excited. Let's see Aaron's deer. I want to hear his story. Let's see the footage. So we get out at like, I don't know, probably 11:30. And even though I was seeing good movement in that timber, I thought, all right, right here at lunch, let's just get down, go meet him, eat, get back in as soon as we can. Mm-hmm. So we got down, We go eat. We shoot the breeze, hang out, see his buck. It's an awesome buck, great kill. Get back in the stand at probably, I think I got in by 1:30. And I was hoping to get back in by 1. It just, the way it is, we got in at 1:30. Luckily, access is great. We tipped in. As soon as I got in the stand, we hear all kinds of ruckus, commotion. We did jump 2 deer on the way in. 1 doe for sure, and I felt like a mature buck. But we couldn't see it because of that brush. But I did see the doe. So we jump in, we climb up the set, and it's a ladder stand for Adam or whatever. It's a ladder stand. So we climb up, and we're not very high off the ground. And all of a sudden, I'm looking. I just got settled because we put out our infield ozone generators, our camera equipment, 3 verbs, or 2 verbs, a camera. It's, you know how it is. You film, it's just so much crap. So we get done putting that. I literally just sit down in the ladder stand, and this is where the ladder stand part is important. So I got my release aid on, and 40 yards in front of me, there's 30 yards, 20 to 30 yards, there's an opening where you see great. Like, this is my shooting lane. I mean, it's clear. Well, then after that, it starts getting brushy, but there's one little opening. There's a hole. I see a doe walking through, just nonchalantly walk through. And I went to, like, total dummy and instinct, I went to point so my camera guy could hear. I go, doe. And as soon as I lift my arm, the release aid tapped the metal ladder, and she looks. And I'm like, don't move. like he's not moving, I'm moving. Instinct, don't move. So we passed the test. She walks by. Well, that gave him enough time to get the camera on that spot. He saw her. Here comes PH following her a foot behind. I mean, like, as soon as she stepped out of this 3-foot lane, he stepped in, but instantly walked through it. Like, no time between, like, I couldn't have shot, basically. So instantly I grabbed my grunt tube, and he's back in this brush, but he's only 35, 40 yards, and they're walking kind of our way. And so I throw up a grunt, another grunt, and then my camera guy goes, hold it, deer behind us, buck behind us. And then here comes another 4-year-old that I have called Kickers, which, and by all means, is a good deer. I had passed him that morning. He was chasing too, and I had passed him. I just had a feeling about the spot. And he went into that grunt call. He was looking. Well, then he sees PH and this doe, and he goes over there. He scrapes. He rubs. I mean, he's ticked off, and he's walking right in front of me, back and forth, making the rounds. And so after he got out like to where he's back in the brush, I throw up another grunt. Nothing. All of a sudden, I hear. They're going at it. They're fighting in there. And we had heard some fighting earlier in that morning, but all we kept seeing were these young bucks and then that 4-year-old. And so I didn't know PH was there, but looking at it now, I'm sure it was him and PH going at it earlier in the morning over that doe. And then when I got back down in the set at 1:30, I think I jumped the way that this Kickers deer came from. I think I jumped that doe and Kickers. And so he was coming back in to pick up his lady, and so they're going at it. So I rattle. I just bang them, and I don't know if that's going to work or not going to work. I kept thinking, if Mark was here, Mark Drury, he'd have killed this deer already. But it's me, so what do? So I'm banging the horns together, and I'm grunting, and then I did the growl or rip roar, the rip growl or whatever. I did one of those, so I gave it, try to get some intensity in there, and then, I never saw him again. So I knew they were there, though. I knew they were there. So we sit the whole time. This is right as we got in. This is 2:00. And so, like, there's 3 hours left of the day. And, like, I'm just jacked. Like, I never let my bow down. I never stopped holding it, I don't think.
Yeah.
And in a ladder stand, that's not exactly easy. So, so I'm just thinking he's going to come back out. But I don't want to get too aggressive. He obviously didn't respond. There's other things happening there. So we wait. It gets dark. And I say to my camera guy, I go, okay, here's the plan. I think I've seen Mark and Terry do this. This will work. let's leave all of our stuff. I remember Ben Rising, actually, of all people, Ben Rising back in the day, a deer that he killed. I remember him doing this. We left all of our equipment in the tree, minus my bow and our camera.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't have to set up the ozone. We didn't have to set the cameras, the verbs, none of that. Everything else was ready. So I said, let's wait till it gets really dark. Let's sneak out of here. Let's leave our stuff in, and let's sneak back in super early, get settled. He's going to be here. We climb down the ladder. I'm sitting there waiting for the camera guy, Trevor, to get from his stand, and he's got to kind of go around the tree, bear hug the tree as he's going around it, get on the ladder, and then climb down. As he's in the bear hug there, like middle of the tree, I'm sitting down there at the ladder, and I'm just waiting, and I hear something to my right. I look over, 10 steps, PH is staring at me.
Ugh.
I'm about to pee my pants. I'm like, OMG. I look up at Trevor, and he doesn't know what's going on because he's in the middle of a bear hug on this tree, And I look at PH, he doesn't know I'm there yet, and I'm like trying to shrink myself to nothing, but it's not working.
Mm-hmm.
He looks up. He sees me, looks up, he looks at the tree, and I mean, it's dark, so I don't know that he actually picks anything up other than the fact that he knows something ain't right. Looks like a bear's in the tree and some black blobs on the ground. He bounds out of there. Never blows or anything like that. He just bounds out. And I'm just shaking my head like, this would have never happened to Mark or Terry. I don't know why, but I always go back to that. What would Mark do? So, nonetheless, I'm like, all right, maybe he didn't realize what's going on. It's still our best option. Adam, this next morning, Wednesday morning, I told Adam he's wanting to get back in that set where he killed Blades. So he's going in there. The wind's not perfect, but not bad. So he goes into the North Timber set. I go back to where we had planned to, the same ladder set. We're sitting there. Nothing's really happening. About 9 a.m., I get a text from Adam. I said, hey, you seeing anything? He's like, I just encountered PH. I'm like, what? I was like, you're messing with me. He goes, no, I'm not messing with you. I was like, oh, man. So he's on the other end of the farm cruising this flat. And I'm sure we had a little to do with that. So yeah. Adam couldn't get a shot. He's using a crossbow right now because he had some off-season elbow surgery or cleanup or whatever. So he's using a crossbow, which actually probably helped his cause. He would have had a better chance than he normally would have, because I have 2 sets in this North Timber. The set where Adam killed, and then a new set just 20 yards north of him, because all the does move where his set is set up for. But all the mature bucks over 3 years of sitting there, I feel like they always skirt us just a little bit above us to the north. So we hung this new set. Well, between him using that crossbow, I felt like he could use the ladder stand to kind of steady it and aim, and he likes that spot. It's his killing tree, so we set him in that spot. He had a choice here too, but he wanted to go with that spot. Well, if he would have been in that other set that we just hung this summer for this instance, I believe he would have killed PH. But nonetheless, he was walking, he was cruising, he didn't have a doe with him. We got footage of it, and he's just walking this flat and going away. And Adam rattles, he grunts, he gets his attention, he looks back, but ultimately he just kept walking, and we haven't seen him since. And the crappy part about it is, it reeled me in, because I was planning on, if things weren't happening, to go to Dad's and just let Adam have it and try to get something done, because I was going to Dad's for gun season anyways, so let's try to go and get something done. Well, that totally roped me into staying at least that whole 5 days. Stayed. We never saw him again. The movement got worse and worse. As they start locking up, basically getting locked down. And then I never had a chance. Then debacles at Dad's, and never had a chance there. So that was a very long-winded story, but that was where I'm at with my season so far.
And I can relate.
So let's hear it. What's happening?
Funny, a lot of similar things to sort of what you just described there. I'll kind of give you the really short Cliff Notes version, and then I might be able to expand on things a little bit, because some of these things are related to our question.
Okay.
But in short, kind of like you got roped into hunting your lease more than you thought, and you didn't go to Terry's, which maybe is a better chance to actually kill something. I got roped into hunting my Michigan farm instead of going to Ohio, where I have a better chance of killing something. Because as you know, I've been focused on trying to kill Holyfield this year. So starting on the 24th of October, I started hunting him. Didn't see him the first like 4, 5, 6 days out there. So I think I hunted 3 or 4 days, and then I did go to Ohio for 2 days, but then I came back. And starting Halloween night, from Halloween night until the 14th of November, I think I had like 10 or 11 encounters with him.
Wow.
Yeah. I twice he cruised by about 60, 65 yards away, deep in this cover, for one of my typical locations. So I hung a new stand to take advantage of that. The next morning, that day, he's chasing a doe in the thick brush on the neighbors about 80, 90 yards away. Later in the day, I see him bedded with a doe. I watch him for like 2, 3 hours, about 100 yards bedded on the neighbors. Then he disappeared. So then I moved to a different stand on the other side of the property because I thought that the doe he was with would probably transition towards the west. They did do that. So like 2 hours later in my new stand, like 300 yards away, here he is again. He looks like he's going to come right into the food plot to where I am, but like 30 yards before he stops, turns and walks parallel inside the cover, does the parallel line of walking. Fast forward to the next day, I think I saw him chasing again back in this thick cover, but I can't hunt in there. The next day, I hunt downwind of a bedding area back and towards this thick stuff that I've been seeing him kind of coming in and out of a little bit. And that morning, didn't see much going on. So like 9 o'clock passes, 10 o'clock passes. Now it's about 11 o'clock. It's kind of warming up, sunny. I've been sitting there all day. And, you know, when it gets to be those midday sits, you start to lose your focus a little bit. And I was planning on sitting there the entire, 13 hours of the day. So about 11 o'clock, I stood up to stretch a little bit, and I was leaning against the tree facing to my south, and I pulled out my phone and was kind of paging through things on my phone, and I would look at my phone, then look up, scan, look at my phone, look up and scan. And as I'm doing that, I'm standing right next to, also my head's right next to my ozonics machine. So you got that little light noise right there in my ear. So I couldn't quite hear as well as maybe I usually would be able to otherwise. So all those things lead me to the point where I finally do hear a little crack behind me. So I turn, look over my left shoulder, and I kind of spin my shoulders and turn on my left shoulder. And right as my eyes get back to where that sound is, I see a deer 20 yards away spin and bolt straight away. And as my eyes focus in on this deer, I realized it was Holyfield.
No.
At 20 yards in the wide open shooting lane. I had my best shot opportunity in him in 3 years right there. And I was not ready for it.
Oh,
so
man,
yeah.
I feel for you.
Yeah, it was pretty devastating. It was a real bummer. So the next day, so I was pretty frustrated, and I decided, I'm going to take a couple days and go back to Ohio because all my, kind of like you mentioned how you wanted to spend some time with your buddies at the deer camp atmosphere. I'd been pushing my main Ohio trip back and back and back, so I missed out on my friends who were down in Ohio where we hunt down there. I was missing out on that. So you know what? I got to clear my head. So I went down there for a couple days, had a really good time. One of my buddies killed a buck down there, which was great. When I came back, now I had 5 more days of season before firearms opened, and I think every day of those 5 days I was home, again, I had encounters with Holyfield every single day. That first morning, had him come through in the morning, grunting and busting through this thick bedding area I was in, but my shooting lane only extended to about 30-some yards, and I got into some really thick stuff that I hadn't bothered cutting through because it was just like a jungle and didn't think a deer would pass through that, so I'd cut a shooting lane to this worn-down trail. Well, when he came in, instead of turning onto that well-used trail, he skirted like 6, 7, 8 yards behind that. So I had him at just under 40 yards probably, but couldn't get a shot at him. Later that day at like 1:30 in the afternoon, he squirted out of that bedding area with a doe and ran by it like 62 yards. And then, it's just like that. It was just things like that for the next 3 days. I saw him come out once. I hung a new stand, saw him walk by an old stand of mine. So the next day I sat in that old stand. he came out by the other one. The next day I sat there again. He passes by at 90 yards. So I was always one step behind or 10 yards too far away or just couldn't get it done.
We
So,
suck. I kept thinking like I'm a failure. Did that ever come through your mind? Because it did
oh man,
mine.
so many times I'm like, either this is the smartest dumb buck I've ever seen, or I'm the dumbest smart hunter like you've ever seen.
That's right.
Like, he's so visible, but he's always just out of reach.
Yeah.
Or I'm doing a really good job of getting myself into the right general area and predicting his general movements, but I'm never quite there. Except for I mean, I had been shooting range twice. One of them I just totally mucked up.
Yeah.
So that's where it is with Holyfield. I never did spend very much time in Ohio. Just hunted like 3 days there, and that didn't come together. And went up north to our northern Michigan deer camp for a couple days during gun season. Had a good time with friends and family up there, but not much going there either. So now I just got to kind of cross my fingers and toes that he'll make it through this next week or so of gun season, and then late season I'll try to get back after him if he made it.
So will your game plan on how you hunt him change late season? I assume food source.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. I'll go back to my kind of drone strike approach that I typically like to try to take. I won't be hunting mornings anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to kind of wait and hopefully pick the right day or two and target him when he hits those late season food sources, because historically he becomes again very active on these late season food sources in December. So I think if I just pick the right time and the right access point, I think I'll have a good chance if he's still alive by then. That's the big if.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now. So I didn't hunt the lease opening weekend. I was at Terry's. I came back and I hunted. I maybe hunted Tuesday. I hunted Thursday. No, Thursday may have been the first day I hunted. Thursday was, and I went and sat the North Timber set. It was slow, didn't see anything. Got out and checked all my cards because I mean I'm just dying to know if he lived or not. And I got him that same morning at 5 a.m. Cruising this kind of creek bottom that we have that is impossible to hunt, nearly impossible to hunt. And that a lot of deer use to get around the place and get kind of around the river bottoms in general. So he made it through the first weekend. But then this past weekend I couldn't go to Terry's, but I could hunt a little bit. So I hunted Friday and I hunted Sunday. And no, I was out Friday. I hunted Sunday and didn't see any, I didn't see any signs of pH. I only got to check like one camera. Didn't see him on that camera. Had some had all kinds of debacles. But I heard one gunshot, and it was right at like 3:34 on my neighbor. Pretty close. And I kept thinking, I wonder if that was him. So I'm kind of waiting to see if he made it through that second weekend. And our season ends on a Tuesday, so it's 2 weekends, and then the Tuesday after that second weekend, it's over. So if he made it through this weekend, I feel really good about my odds, going into the late season. The issue with me is I don't have a lot of food, and they become, like after gun season, nearly impossible to see in daylight. So I don't know. I mean, I definitely got to change gears and focus, but I'm now back to kind of like the drawing board on, okay, dude, do I actually succeed here, or is it I hope he lives till next year?
Yeah.
Which I may be in that boat.
Oh man, they sure know how to frustrate us, don't they?
Yeah, which I think your question of the day is a very similar situation, right?
Yeah, I think it kind of falls right in line with several of our stories here. So why don't we get to that question of the day and then talk a little more?
Okay. The question of the day is brought to you by Cabela's, the world's foremost outfitter.
Hey Mark, quick question here. I've got a buck I'm hunting, and I heard him blow at a doe, and while I was stuck in my tree stand Saturday night, and he scared her out of there, and then I waited, shut my flashlight in the field, didn't see any eyes, got down out, went back up Sunday morning. Sunday morning comes, I sit, didn't see anything again, kind of a bad morning, got out, checked my camera real quick on my way out, and it was my buck I'm hunting that was blowing at the does the previous night. So I called my buddy, got his climber, went into the woods where I think this buck was coming from before he got to my food plot, and I'm sitting there, and sure enough, last night he comes walking through about 10 minutes before dark, hooking a tree, Didn't even know I was there. He was about 40 yards away from me. I'm with a crossbow, and he went to step away, and I took a shot at him, but I missed. How long should I wait before I hunt this buck again?
So, do you want first stab of this, Matt, or do you want me to take it?
Sure, mine will be brief. Even though I didn't miss PH, I really mucked it up like he said he did, and I was on the ground, he was on the ground. I didn't think twice about going back in there personally, and if he missed him totally, in my opinion, chances are he didn't know what the heck that was that flew by him. If he never saw the guy and or smelled him or busted him, like, I wouldn't hesitate to go right back in, honestly. He may change his pattern a little bit there, but I bet he goes back to it at some point. Like, if he never actually sees you or busts you, or, like, I'd go back in, personally. That's my gut instinct. How about you?
Yeah, I think I tend to agree with you. I mean, he may be that exact stand, right away. He might avoid that general area for a little while.
Yeah.
But I certainly think that he could be. It sounds like he was very active in that general area over this couple day period. If he, saw him on trail camera the night before, and then the next day he got a shot at him. So I wouldn't be afraid to go right back in there either. Maybe shift into a different stand nearby. But I think, to your point, the type of spooking makes a big difference when it comes to what kind of impact it might have on the deer. So I think, the worst, in my opinion, the worst thing to happen is for that deer to wind you.
Mm-hmm.
If you get winded by a buck, I think your chances are lowest. Then I think a buck seeing you, and then I think a buck getting spooked by like a random thing, like either the sound of something, shooting a bow, but him not really knowing what happened, or, if a doe spooks near him and takes him with her, that kind of thing. I'd say that's the least bad of the different options that could happen there. So I wouldn't be too worried about it. Now he asked this question like a week or so ago, so I think maybe he's already gone in there. If you haven't yet, I think feel free to get after it now by all means, for sure. And I also think that the impacts of a spooked deer can also change based on the time of year. So let's say like right now in November, we're still in the middle of that kind of rutting activity. I think this is that time of year you can get away with a lot more. So even if you spook a deer today, he's not thinking as much with his mind right now. He's thinking with a different part of his body still. So I think you can get away with making mistakes, and he'll make more mistakes too. Now, if you do that same thing on December 27th, after he's been hunted for 3 months or something like that, then he's probably going to be a lot more apt to get more nervous, because he's been chased around for months and months. And when he does have something happen again, now he's like, dang it, I'm staying away from this. I'm sick of it.
And that could actually affect you for the following year. I mean, he could decide to leave and just not come back.
Yeah, you just don't know. So that would be another thing. Time of year, the kind of spook. And then I guess the only other thing that might influence the impact of this too would just be what the general hunting pressure is around you. So like if you're the only person hunting this larger area, and so you're the only person applying any hunting pressure, and you've been keeping your pressure low to this point, you might be able to, again, get away with more. While on the other hand, if you've been hunting like crazy and you're spooking deer every night, and your neighbors are right there and they're spooking deer, so if this is like the 10th negative encounter he's had with something, again, that might be much more likely to be a tipping point and change his behavior, change his location drastically, much more so unless this is just the second time it's ever happened. So I would think about all those things. In my case with the Holyfield incident, so he spooked when he saw the movement in the tree. He caught me in the tree moving. So I decided not to hunt that stand again for a while, but I still hunted nearby. So he spooked out of that tree after seeing me. 3 days later, I came back in the morning and hunted a stand about 80, maybe 100 yards away, 80 to 100 yards away, and I saw him. That was that day that I had him at 40 yards, but behind the brush. So he maybe didn't go by that stand, but he was right in the wheelhouse still. So you can adjust. And then that day, the day I had him at 40 yards, I didn't mention this earlier. So he comes through, doesn't step into my main shooting lane, goes 9-10 yards back into the brush from it. He's walking through this brush, and I grunted to him. No, did I grunt? No, I used the can call. I tried a can call a couple times, and he stopped. And then as he stopped, looking my direction, another buck, a young 2-year-old, comes just blasting by me, comes running by past me, and goes off to my right, ahead of Holyfield. And then I'm not paying attention to him at all, though. I'm just watching Holyfield standing here. Well, like 20 seconds later or something, Holyfield's still standing there, kind of just looking around. That buck comes running back, but this time runs right by Holyfield. And then as he gets past him, that buck starts blowing, and he runs off. So that buck, I don't know if he saw something he didn't like or if he had made his way all the way downwind of me, but something made that 2-year-old not happy. And so he went running off blowing, and then Holyfield followed him. Holyfield didn't like run off or bound or really spook, but he just kind of walked off that direction. So he kind of got an idea of, something's not quite right here, maybe. Well, even though that happened, I still saw him following a doe 4 hours later, 65 yards away from me. And then the next night I saw him 150 yards from there in daylight. And the next night I saw him 250 yards away there during daylight. So I think that's a product of the fact that even though there was a few encounters where I screwed up, or that one time I screwed up, I've been very, very careful about my wind. I've been very, very careful about how I get in and out. So to get into these spots that I'm hunting that are in the core of this property, I've been heading in to get to my tree stand 2 hours before daylight. I've been taking a very, very long route that goes through a deep swamp to avoid any fields, any food sources. So it's taken me like a long time to get to my tree stand, but I'm trying to not spook deer in the mornings getting in. And then every evening from this area, I've been able to swindle my wife into picking me up in my truck or my ATV.
That's nice.
So then my exit route every time is pretty good. Like deer are getting bumped off the field, but it's by a vehicle and it's not by a human being walking around. So they're never associating, a hunter with that impact. So I think that was, of all the things I've done, I think that maybe made one of the biggest differences, and at least allowing me to still be seeing him, like to still keep him daylight active after so many hunts in here. I know back in the day before I started doing this, I never would have had that happen. So
yeah,
that's kind of my 2 cents on it. I don't know. Anything else worth adding, Matt?
No, I liked how he got aggressive, and he got the pictures. He went and got a climber, and he went into the timber, and kind of went to the deer. And this time of year, you can do that. I don't think you can do that early season and late season quite as easily. I'm sure there are guys out there that succeed doing that, but you just tend to play it a little more safe. But I like that he made the call. He got aggressive, and the only thing I thought was odd was when he kept saying that the buck, he felt like that buck was blowing at the does. I don't think they would. I don't know what instance there would be where that buck would be blowing at the does. So, when I heard it, I raised an eyebrow, thinking, well, he was probably blowing at the guy. But I don't know the guy's situation, if what the wind was doing or where he was sitting. But that was kind of my first instinct. Doesn't make sense that he was blowing at the does necessarily. But I don't know. Did you catch on to that part too at all?
Yeah, I kind of just assumed like he was. My assumption was that he was just saying the buck blew and spooked out the field and made everything spook. You know, so assuming that he was, like you said, probably spooked from catching wind or something, or something spooked that buck, and then the buck started blowing, and then he just cleared the field probably.
Gotcha.
At least that's the way I took it. But to your point, I really like the fact that he had that intel from the sighting or from the trail camera, and then he pushed right in there and was aggressive. That's the way to do it, I think, in November. In those many times in those kinds of cases. And I think still, as this podcast is going out, we're still in November, and even though we're on the back half of the month, you still can catch that rutting activity. You still can be aggressive. You get these big old bucks still on their feet late in the month trying to catch those final does. So I think don't give up, right? I think it's still time to grind at it if you can. And man, hopefully good things are still to come, I'd say.
And there's some states like Illinois, historically, in our opinion anyways, just by kind of watching our teams and hunting there ourselves, it only gets good mid to late October or November anyhow, a lot of times. You can, obviously there's good rutting activity, but historically right around that first gun season, which had just happened here, those are good periods to go. And then the second gun comes in, I think this year it's November 30th through December 3rd. Like, that'll be a good period right after Thanksgiving there. That's usually a good period as well. So you just typically by then you're changing your tactics a little bit. They're going back to food, going back to green. So just looking at the calendar and looking forward, you might have to switch, depending on where you're at, you might have to switch up your tactics a little bit moving forward here.
Yeah. I've experienced some good things during that, Thanksgiving week or just afterwards, and I've heard of so many guys that have killed big mature bucks at that time period. So I'm going to be heading down to Ohio post Thanksgiving and try to take advantage of that perspective movement myself.
Yeah.
So I got my fingers crossed.
Good luck. I'm heading to Illinois, so we got a lease over there. I'm going to I got a muzzleloader tag, but in Illinois, the muzzleloader tag you can use in the second gun season and then in the muzzleloader season. So based on the way it reads there on the back of the tag. So I'm going to try to use my muzzleloader tag and during that second firearm season, but that's the first chance you can use your muzzleloader tag, in Illinois. So anyways, I'm going to try that and we'll see what we get. And actually tomorrow when we're filming this Monday, what's today's date? The 20th, I'm going ahead to Dad's tomorrow because Missouri's rifle season or firearm season ends tomorrow, Tuesday the 21st. And I'm going to try one last ditch effort at somewhere really good to hunt to try to get something on the ground because this season, boy, luckily they don't make 13 with just Terry and I because it'd be a season of nothing so far.
Your dad hasn't killed anything either?
No, he hasn't, and he's been after a couple of really good deer. Nothing, nothing like what Mark's accustomed to in Iowa, of course, but really, really nice deer for his farm. And he usually picks one or two deer that are the oldest deer on his place, the biggest deer on his place, and then he'll pass a bunch of really good deer to get to that deer. He hadn't caught up with them yet, and he's had a few little setbacks, and hopefully here in the next podcast or two we'll be able to talk about that a little bit more. But he hadn't gotten it done yet, but he's still grinding, so hopefully he'll have some luck here.
That's all you can do. Keep on grinding.
That's right.
So, well, I guess with that, what do you think? Should we wrap this one up?
Let's go kill something, brother.
I think that's a good plan. Well, then I'll just leave our listeners and viewers with my quick update, which is that if you'd like to send in a question of your own for a future episode, you can do that by going over to wiredtohunt.com/100% wild. And you can also subscribe to the audio version of this podcast over on iTunes or Stitcher or Google Play or wherever you like to get your podcasts. And then if you want to follow along with my hunts for Holyfield and any of that stuff, you can find it all on wiredtohunt.com or the different Wired to Hunt social media platforms. What about you, Matt?
As always, you can watch this podcast and so many more on the Drury Outdoors YouTube channel. And while you're over there, please hit subscribe. We're trying to reach 100,000 subscribers. We're giving a brand new PSE away. It's a cool deal, cool giveaway. Would love to have you guys join us because there's so much more great original content. We're pumping out more stuff now than we ever have that's just for YouTube. So we're really trying to embrace that audience, just like we have embraced Outdoor Channel and Pursuit Channel in the past, and our DVD, subscribers or users back in the day. We're really embracing this YouTube channel, and we're putting a lot of original content. So by all means, please check us out, and hopefully you'll enjoy what you're watching.
Yeah, I just saw you guys posted a video about Mark explaining his new food plot plans on his new farm in Missouri.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that one. That was good.
We have another one that we're fixing to do. So he bought two farms in Missouri, a 97-acre piece and a 120-acre piece in the off-season. And he did him and Wade both did a really, really good job of producing all the work that they were putting into the plot and why. And then it's cool because now we're seeing kind of the fruits of their labor. My 84-year-old grandmother, my Aunt Linda, who is Jared and Justin Lurk's mother, they both killed bucks on one of the places, the 97-acre farm. And then Wade's wife, Kyle, she killed a buck. This is all during rifle season here. She killed a buck on the 120-acre piece. So it kind of finishes the storylines for all the work that that they put into these spots. So the 120, I think, once we get back from Thanksgiving break, I think we're going to be editing that piece and putting it on YouTube. So be on the lookout for it. It's pretty cool.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to that. It was neat, too, because, Mark was on one of our episodes this summer where he was talking to us about those properties and what he was doing. So it was neat to get to see it now. So I'm looking forward to that next one as well.
Good deal.
I guess with that, we'll wrap this up. Thanks, everyone, for watching and listening.
All right, guys, everybody, please be safe. Wear those safety harnesses.